The night was quiet, but 12-year-old Kelechi could not sleep. He lay on the cold floor of the wooden hut, staring at the moonlight that leaked through the cracks. Around him, other children and women whispered in fear. He could hear the sound of heavy chains dragging, and the footsteps of guards moving outside. The sound always made his heart beat faster. Kelechi thought of his mother. He remembered the smell of her food, the sound of her singing by the river, and how she used to plait his hair under the mango tree. Now, she was gone. They had been separated weeks ago when the white men came with fire and guns. Every time he thought of her, a lump formed in his throat, and he fought back tears. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and one of the guards shouted at them to stay quiet. The man's torchlight swept across their faces. Everyone froze like haunted animals. Kelechi quickly shut his eyes, pretending to sleep, but his body trembled. He prayed silently, begging God to keep him safe, to help him see his mother again. When the guard finally left, Kelechi opened his eyes slowly. He could hear the distant waves of the ocean. He did not know what waited for him beyond those waters, but deep inside, he felt it would change his life forever. Fear mixed with curiosity, and he whispered to himself, "One day, I will be free again." The morning came with a cruel whip of sound. The guard stormed in, ordering everyone to line up outside. Kelechi's small legs shook as he joined the others, his bare feet pressed against the sharp stones on the ground. The sun was rising, but its warmth brought no comfort. Instead, the smell of salt, sweat, and fear filled the air. Beside Kelechi stood Amara, a girl about his age. Her face was stained, but her eyes carried fire. When the guard turned away, she whispered, "Don't cry. They want us to fear them. We must stay strong." Kelechi looked at her in surprise, and for the first time since his capture, he felt a spark of courage. The guards forced them toward the shore where a massive ship floated like a beast waiting to swallow them. Chains rattled, and people groaned under the weight of iron shackles. Kelechi's heart raced. He thought of running, but the memory of another boy who tried still haunted him. The boy's body had been left in the dirt, lifeless. That night, when darkness came, Kelechi and Amara sat close together in the cramped hut. Amara leaned close and whispered, "Promise me something. Promise me we will not forget who we are, no matter where they take us." Kelechi nodded, his small hands trembling. In that moment, they both made a silent oath, an oath to survive, to remember, and one day, to be free. The day of departure arrived with screams. The captives were dragged one by one onto the ship. The air smelled of sweat, blood, and sea salt. Kelechi's wrist burned from the iron cuffs as he stumbled up the wooden plank. He looked back at the village shoreline, fading in the distance, and a deep sadness gripped his heart. He wondered if he would ever see his homeland again. Inside the ship, darkness swallowed them. The space was small and crowded, with hardly enough room to sit. Men, women, and children were chained together in rows. The air was thick and hard to breathe. Kelechi coughed, his chest tight. A man beside him whispered, "Breathe slowly, little one. Save your strength." His voice was weak but gentle. At night, the ship rocked violently with the waves. Water leaked through the cracks above, dripping onto their faces. Some cried, some prayed, and others sat in silence as if their voices had been stolen. Kelechi felt fear pressing against him, but he remembered Amara's words. He forced himself not to cry, even though his body trembled with every creak of the ship. When the guards came below with torches, their faces looked like shadows of death. They shouted in a language Kelechi could not understand, but their whips spoke clearly. A man who moaned too loudly was struck until he fell silent. Kelechi closed his eyes and thought of his mother's voice. He promised himself he would not let the darkness swallow him. He would live. He had to live. Days turned into nights, but inside the ship's belly, time felt endless. The air was heavy with sickness. Some people coughed until their bodies grew weak, and others lay still, never waking again. Each morning, the guards dragged the lifeless ones away, their chains clinking like sad music. Kelechi tried not to look, but the sound stayed in his ears. Amara sat close to him, her voice a soft whisper. Kelechi, do you hear the ocean? It's calling us. One day, it will carry us back home. Her words gave him comfort, though he knew she was only trying to make him feel strong. He nodded and whispered back, I will not forget home. Never. That secret exchange became their shield against the darkness. One night, when the guards were gone, an older man began to hum a song from the village. Slowly, others joined, their voices low and trembling but filled with memory. The song spoke of freedom, of rivers, and of ancestors watching over them. Kelechi closed his eyes, and for a brief moment, he felt like he was back under the mango tree with his mother. But the peace did not last. The next day, a storm came. The ship tossed and turned like a leaf in the wind. Water rushed through the cracks, and the captives screamed in terror. The guards shouted angrily, beating anyone who moved. Kelechi clung to Amara's hand, his small fingers gripping hers tightly. In the chaos, a thought struck him hard: if the sea can swallow the ship, maybe it can also set them free. The storm grew wilder as the night deepened. Thunder cracked like drums of war, and lightning tore the sky apart. The ship groaned under the weight of angry waves, tilting dangerously from side to side. Chains clattered loudly as the captives screamed, their voices mixing with the roar of the ocean. Kelechi's heart pounded. He thought this was the end. A huge wave crashed against the side, and water flooded into the lower deck. The captives struggled, coughing and gasping, trying to lift their heads above the rising water. Amara clung to Kelechi, her eyes wide with fear. Don't let go, she cried. Kelechi held on tightly, though his small arms were weak. Around them, panic grew, men prayed loudly, women sobbed, and children wailed. Suddenly, one of the wooden beams cracked, and the ship shook violently. In the chaos, part of the wall split open, revealing the Black Sea outside. Cold water rushed in with terrible force. For a moment, Kelechi thought the ship would break apart completely. The guards above shouted orders, their boots thundering on the deck, but even their anger sounded afraid. Then something strange happened. As the storm raged, the chains binding Kelechi's ankles shifted slightly, almost as if the ocean itself was trying to loosen them. He froze, realizing that nature had given him a chance. He whispered to Amara, maybe the sea is on our side. She looked at him with hope glowing through her fear. In that moment, a seed of courage began to grow inside them both. When the storm finally calmed, silence fell like a heavy blanket. The ship floated weakly, creaking as if it too had survived the beating. Many captives were gone, some taken by sickness, others swallowed by the sea. The air smelled of damp wood and death. Kelechi sat close to Amara, shivering not from the cold, but from the memory of how close they had come to drowning. That night, when the guards left the lower deck, Amara leaned close. Kelechi, she whispered, her voice shaking but steady, did you see how the sea loosened your chains? That was not by chance. Maybe it was a sign. Kelechi's eyes widened. He had felt it too, but hearing her say it made the thought stronger. The sea, the storm, the cracked wood, it all seemed like the earth itself was calling them to fight for freedom. An older man, the same one who had sung the village song, overheard them. His name was Obinna. He whispered, children, keep your hope, but be wise. These men will not free us. If we want life, we must take it. His words were heavy, but they carried a spark. Kelechi and Amara nodded slowly. For the first time, they were not only thinking of surviving, they were beginning to dream of escaping. Kelechi lay awake long after everyone else had closed their eyes. He imagined himself running barefoot on the red earth of his village, chasing goats, hearing his mother laugh. His heart ached, but the picture gave him strength. As the ship rocked gently on the waves, he made a promise in his heart: I will not die in chains. I will find freedom, even if the sea must help me do it. The morning after the storm, the guards grew crueler. Perhaps they feared the captive's growing spirit, or maybe the storm had shaken their pride. With angry shouts, they whipped anyone who moved too slowly. Kelechi flinched as the lash struck the back of a young man beside him. The man gritted his teeth, refusing to cry out, and as silent defiance stayed in Kelechi's heart. Amara squeezed his hand when the guards turned away. They want us to be broken, she whispered. But if we hold on inside, they can never win. Her words lit a fire in him, though his wrist still bled where the iron rubbed against his skin. He looked at her and nodded firmly. Later that night, when the guards finally left, Obinna leaned close to Kelechi and Amara. His voice was low, like the rustle of leaves. The sea gave us a chance. But we must move carefully. A mistake means death. He looked at their chains and added, I have watched the cracks in the wood. If another storm comes, we may break free. Kelechi's heart pounded with both fear and hope. The thought of escape seemed impossible, yet the idea refused to leave his mind. Amara's eyes glowed in the dim light, her spirit unshaken. For the first time since his capture, Kelechi felt something new rising inside him, not just the will to survive, but the hunger for freedom. The next morning, the captives were dragged up to the deck for the first time since the storm. The sunlight was blinding after so many days in darkness, and the salty wind cut across their faces. For a brief moment, Kelechi felt the sky smile at him, but the guards quickly reminded them that freedom was far away. One man, tall and strong, lifted his head too proudly. His name was Chinedu. When a guard shoved him, he refused to bow. I will not be your dog, he shouted, his voice bowed like thunder. For a heartbeat, silence fell. Then the guards rushed him. Their whips tore his skin, but Chinedu kept his back straight. Even as blood ran down his body, he did not cry. Kelechi's stomach twisted. He wanted to look away, but Amara's hand squeezed his. Don't forget this, she whispered through clenched teeth. See how even beaten, he is still free inside. Kelechi swallowed hard, his chest heavy. He understood then that freedom was not just about chains, it was about spirit. At last, Chinedu collapsed, his body still trembling with defiance. The guards dragged him aside, leaving his blood on the deck as a warning. But instead of fear, a strange power spread among the captives. Kelechi felt it too. He looked at Amara and Obinna, and without words, they knew, if one man could stand strong against the whip, then perhaps they all could. That night, the air below deck was heavy with silence. No one spoke of Chinedu's beating, but everyone felt it. His courage had planted a seed inside their hearts. Kelechi could see it in their eyes. Something had changed. They were afraid, yes, but they were no longer completely broken. Amara leaned close to him. Did you see how he stood? Even in pain, he was stronger than them. Kelechi nodded, his voice trembling. If he could stand against them, maybe we can do more than just survive. His words surprised even him. For the first time, he was not only dreaming of freedom, he was speaking it. Obinna listened carefully, his wrinkled face calm. Children, you are right, he whispered. But courage must be guided. Fire burns bright, but without care, it can destroy itself. We must wait for the right moment. His eyes looked toward the cracks in the wooden wall where seawater sometimes leaked. The ship itself is weak. If we learn its weaknesses, we may find our chance. The three of them agreed to watch, listen, and learn. Every creak of the ship, every step of the guards, every storm, they would remember it all. In the darkness, chained and beaten, they began to weave a secret plan. The guards thought they had broken the captives, but in truth, the spirit of rebellion was being born in whispers. Days passed, and Kelechi, Amara, and Obinna quietly studied the ship. They noticed which guard carried the keys, which boards were rotting, and when the sea grew rough enough to cover their whispers. Every detail mattered, because one mistake could cost them their lives. One evening, while the guards argued above deck, Obinna leaned closer. "Children, tonight we try something small. No shouting, no rushing. Just watch." From under his torn cloth, he pulled out a thin piece of metal he had hidden, a nail he had loosened from the wooden floor. Kelechi's eyes widened in awe. It looked like nothing, but in Obinna's hands, it was a weapon of hope. Obinna bent over his chain lock and began to walk silently. His old fingers shook, but his eyes burned with focus. Kelechi and Amara held their breath, their hearts pounding with fear. If the guards saw, they would all be killed. The silence was so deep they could hear the ocean slapping against the hull outside. Then, with a soft click, Obinna's shackle shifted. He quickly pressed it back into place before the guards returned, Kelechi's chest filled with fire. For the first time, he had seen the chains loosen. Freedom was not just a dream anymore, it was real, and it was close. Amara's eyes gleamed in the darkness as she whispered, "If he can open one, then one day we can open all." In that moment, the three of them knew their lives would never be the same again.